Hey everyone, today we're going to review Unit 3, which is about graphing and writing linear functions. So starting with their graphs, there's three main key features that you need to know. The first is the y-intercept, and that's where the line crosses the y-axis. Or you can think of this as the point where x is equal to 0. The next key feature is the x-intercept, and that's where the line crosses the x-axis or the point where y equals 0. The weird thing about x-intercept is that there's 4 different words that all mean the same thing. So R stands for root. The O is not actually an O, it's supposed to be a 0. X for x-intercept. And S for solution. So if you see any one of these 4 words, it means that they want the x-intercept. So you could just use the acronym ROX. And then the third thing is slope, and slope is what describes how steep the line is, so the steepness of the line. You need at least 2 points to calculate slope. That's the formula right there below it. y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And don't worry, that will be on your STAAR chart, so you don't have to memorize that. Let's look at a few examples. So here's our first graph here. And we want to identify all the features. So starting with 0, remember 0 means x-intercept. We find the x-axis, we look to see where it crosses, and it's at -6. That's the point, -6, 0. Okay, now the y-intercept. So y-axis, look to see where it crosses, and it's at the 4. So y-intercept is 4. And that's the point 0, 4. Now for slope. For slope, you need at least 2 points. The good thing about finding the intercept is those can be your 2 points. So this is x1 and y1, and this can be x2, y2. So now plugging it into the formula, we're going to subtract the y's first. So y2 minus y1 would be 4 minus 0 over x2 minus x1 is 0 minus -6. So this is actually still going to be a fraction, but you can simplify it a little bit. So it's 4 over 6, but when you simplify it, that's just 2 over 3. So the slope is 2 over 3. And now that we have all of this stuff, we can write the equation in y equals mx plus b form. Remember that slope is m, and y-intercept is b. So putting everything together would be y equals 2/3 x plus 4. Okay, let's look at another one. So new graph. Again, starting with the 0, that's x-axis. Look for where it crosses, right at the 4, and that's the point 4, 0. Now y-intercept, so y-axis, look where it crosses at 8, and that's the point 0, 8. So now if I want to find slope, I can use those 2 points. This can be x1, y1, x2, y2. So let's plug them in. So starting with 8 minus 0 over 0 minus 4. That gives us 8 over -4, which simplifies to just -2. So now for our equation, again, we're doing y equals mx plus b. Y-intercept is b, and slope is m. So if I put everything together, y equals -2x plus 8. Okay, now I want to look at how to write equations using the different forms. So there's 3 different forms of a linear equation. The first one, the one that's most common that we use all the time, is slope-intercept form. In fact, that's the one that we just finished using. And the 2 main things that you need to know for this one are slope and y-intercept. Okay, the second type is point-slope form. So there it is right there. And again, there's 2 things that you need. You need slope, so that's m, but you also need a point. So that x1, y1 is just coming from a point that's on that line. Right, and then the third type is standard form. Standard form kind of just comes naturally after you start simplifying everything. The one thing that you do need to remember is that a has to be a positive whole number. And again, all three of these are going to be on your STAAR formula chart, so you don't have to remember them. You just have to know how to use them. Okay, so we have two examples. I want to write the equations in all three forms. So this is a little bit backwards. We're going to start out with point slope form, then we're going to move to slope intercept, and then we're going to move to standard. So looking at point slope form, we need two things. We need slope and we need a point. Well, the point is no problem. If you look at our examples here, I have 2 points. So I can say x1, y1, x2, y2. So the slope I got. I'm sorry, the point I already have. It's the slope that we need to find. But slope formula, remember that from before? So let's calculate that. So slope m equals 12 minus 4 over negative 3 minus 1. So that would be 8 over negative 4, which simplifies to just negative 2. And now that I have slope, I'm going to plug this in to point slope form. So that's the one that has y minus y1 equals m, x minus x1. So if I start writing this, this would be y minus, well, y1, we have it labeled up here. It's 4 equals m, well, m is the slope that we found, x minus x1 labeled up here. So that's already point slope form. So that's one form down. I'm going to highlight this just because it's important. They told us to find all three. There we go. Okay, next I want to move down to slope intercept form. So what we're going to do is get this negative 2 and we're going to multiply it in. So that would be negative 2x plus 2. Remember that a negative times another negative is a positive. And then that 4, I want to move it over. So since it's minus, we're going to do the opposite and we're going to add. So now I have y is equal to negative 2x plus 6. Well, guess what? That right there, that's slope intercept form. Remember y equals mx plus b? That's it right there. Okay, and then last one is standard form. In standard form, so just to remind you guys, standard form is ax plus by equals c. So the main thing that I see is that x and y are both on the same side. Over here, they're not. So this x here, I want to move it over. And since right there it's negative, we're going to add it to both sides, which would give me 2x plus y is equal to 6. And that's standard form right there. Okay, so wanted me to find all three forms? There they are, all three forms. Okay, so let's do that one more time. So I have 2 new points. Okay, so if those are my 2 points, I'm going to call this x1, y1, and x2, y2. So let's start off with our slope. So y2 minus y1 would be 7 minus 1 over x2 minus x1, 6 minus negative 12. So this would be 6 over 18, which when you simplify it is 1/3. Cool. Okay, next thing, point slope form. Okay, so I'm going to write it so you guys can see y minus y1 equals m, x minus x1. So we're going to plug in as we go. So y1, we have it labeled up here, is 1, so minus 1, equals m, which we said was 1/3, x minus x1, so minus negative 12. But we already know that when we have minus negative, that turns to a plus sign, so I'm going to change it to a plus. And that right there is point slope form of this line. Okay, next we want to move on to slope intercept form. So we're going to start off first by multiplying that fraction in. So y minus 1 equals 1/3 x. And then 1/3 times 12, you can put this in the calculator, or you can think of it as 12 divided by 3, and that gives us 4. Okay, now the 1 over here, I want to move it over, so we're going to do opposite operation and we're going to add. So now we have y equals 1/3 x plus 5, and that right there is slope intercept form, the one that's y equals mx plus b. Okay, and then last, we want to put it in standard form. Standard form has x and y both on the same side. So first thing I want to do is this 1/3 x. If I move it over, we're going to subtract. We're going to do that to both. So now I have negative 1/3 x plus y equals 5. Now the rule for standard form is that that number in the very front cannot be negative and it cannot be a fraction. So that's two different things I need to fix. So the way we fix it is whatever's at the bottom. So since we have a 3 here, we're going to multiply everything by 3. And then because it's negative, we're also going to multiply it by a negative. So when you multiply this in, that becomes a positive 1x. There's a 1 right there in the front, but I'm actually not going to write it because you won't normally see it. Okay, next part, negative 3 times y, so that would be minus 3y equals, and into the next part, negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. And now x and y are both on the same side. There's no fractions, and x is positive. So that right there is standard form. So I know it's a lot. Like looking at it here, it's a lot of work, but I know you guys can do this. Okay, last thing that was in this unit is writing parallel and perpendicular lines. So it's honestly kind of what we already did. The one thing you have to remember is that parallel lines will have the same slope, like exact same slope. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slope. So that just means that you're going to flip the fraction and you're going to change the sign. So for example, if you had 2/3, you would change that to negative 3/2. So see how this flipped upside down, and since this one was positive, we changed it to negative. Okay, so I have quite a few examples. I'm not going to do all 4 of them. I think we're just going to do 2. So let's do one parallel and let's do one perpendicular. So this first one, I want a line that's parallel to y equals negative 3x minus 7, but going through the point negative 2, 5. And in the instructions, it says slope intercept form, so we're just going to keep it in y equals mx plus b. Okay, so as far as slope, since we're dealing with parallel, we're just going to use the exact same slope. So m is equal to negative 3. And then our point, here's our x1, y1. So we're going to start out using point slope form. I'm just going to put PSF for point slope form. Y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So let's fill this in. Y minus y1 is 5 equals m, we're using negative 3. X minus x1 is negative 2. But double negative means that we change that to a plus sign. Okay, but instructions said to go all the way to slope intercept form. So let's multiply that negative 3 inside. So now I have y minus 5 equals negative 3x minus 6. And now to get the 5 to move over to the other side, we're going to do opposite operation and we're going to add. So I'm left with y equals negative 3x minus 1. So that's the equation of the line that goes through the point negative 2, 5, and is parallel to that original line, negative 3x minus 7. Okay, now let's do one where it's perpendicular. So I want a line that's perpendicular to negative 3x minus 7, but that goes through the point 3, 7. Okay, so since it's perpendicular, as far as the slope goes, we are going to flip it upside down, and we're going to use the opposite sign. So I know right now it's not a fraction, but remember all whole numbers have invisible 1. So if I flipped it over, it would be 1 over 3. And since this one was negative, ours is going to be positive. Then our point is x1, y1. So now using point slope form, y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Let's fill it in. So y minus, our y1 is 7, equals m, and we're using 1/3. X minus x1 was 3. Now let's multiply that fraction into the parentheses. Let's distribute. Y minus 7 is equal to 1/3 x minus 1. And then last, that 7, I want to move it over to the other side. So opposite operation says that I need to add. And I'm left with y equals 1/3 x plus 6. So that line right there is perpendicular to the original line, but it's also going through the point 3, 7.